Hello everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary Series. We're doing 1915 today, and here I am against this bright sylvan background. I hope the brightness will not blind any of you. Okay, what do we have today? Well, a recap in the previous video, which was 1939. We found out that Konstantin Grunwald thought that Russia would be better off with Germany as an ally so that she could turn eastward and accomplish her special mission, historical mission, as he put it, in the East. However he conceived that. But he had to concede that it was probably not possible, and he seemed to think that under the circumstances, the alliance with Britain, the Russian alliance with Britain, was probably a good idea. He said that Dmitri, who was at this point very anti-Soviet and anti-war, was not of the same mind, didn't like the idea of the British allowing this connection with the Soviet Union, this alliance. Okay, our cast for today. Wow, it's extremely varied. As the title of the video suggests, we have not only showfolk, actresses and actors, actresses, and dancers, and theater people in general. We have also some sort of connection, royal connections, natural son of Grand Duke Alexei. We have two saints, two future saints. They weren't saints yet at that time. And we even have a pioneering Russian female test pilot. So go figure. Whatever you think of what Dmitri was doing in Moscow that weekend, the people he was meeting with were certainly very interesting. Okay, so it's the 11th/24th of January in Moscow at room number 10 at the Metropole Hotel, and 5 degrees below freezing, so it's cold. Here we go. I got up around 11 o'clock, and it was very difficult after yesterday's supper. From there, I went to the monastery to see Auntie. I found her in the church. I heard Father Mitrofan preach. It was very good. Then I went to lunch with Auntie. We talked for a long time. Around 2:30, I went home, after which I set off for Neskuchnaya to see Countess Belyovskaya. I stayed until 7 o'clock. We talked about Alexei. He's simply gone out of his mind. Now he wants a divorce, which he requested through Auntie, and Belyovskaya herself is so outraged by this whole affair that blank, there's an illegible word. She complained phenomenally about her lot. Back home, I dined alone in the restaurant. Before that, okay, let me interject, the restaurant of the Metropole Hotel. Before that, Millie Galanchikova, where's the stress on that? Millie Galanchikova, I don't know, stopped by to see me. She just arrived today from Petrograd. Around 9 o'clock, I went to the ballet and saw Telyakovsky there. He showed me around the whole theater and talked a lot about his son, who's in the Horse Guards. Geltzer performed and did well. Afterwards, I had supper with Nastya, the two Geltzers, Moskvin and Tamara. It was remarkably lively and nice, and only ended around 7 o'clock a.m. We drank a frightful amount. Oh, Dmitri, oh yeah. Okay, here we go. So we start out the day, after, dragging himself out of bed at 11 o'clock, a little the worse for wear, obviously. We start out the day at the Martha and Mary Monastery. So in English, in the Western tradition, it would be called a convent. But in Russian, there's only the one word, monastir, for both male and female monastics for their establishments. And this one was founded by Ella in 1909. So once the two kids, her wards, Dmitri and Maria, were old enough to be independent, she founded this monastery. And she lived there herself, I believe. And the rector of the church there, and also the spiritual father in the Orthodox tradition, was a fellow named Fr Sergii. Dmitri calls him by his birth name, Mitrofan. I'm not sure why. When he became a priest, he took the name Fr Sergii, Sergii being an older form of Sergei, and an interesting man. He was in his 40s at the time. He had a military background. So he would have had that point of connection with Dmitri, and actually he had been the chaplain of one of the regiments, or the regiment, the Dragoon Regiment, that Ella was the honorary commander of. And so they probably met in that way. I'm not sure, but he continued to serve as a military chaplain, I think, right up until, well, I don't know. I think he was actually a chaplain in the field during the First World War, although here in 1915 he is not. He's the rector of the church there. He was a married priest. He was not a monastic. And he would remain in Russia after the revolution and die in 1948 after the Second World War. So he saw some things. And he would then become a saint, I think in the 1990s. I think he wasn't a martyr as far as I know, but the story is that through his prayers, the church in this village, I can't remember the name of the village or town where he was living, that was extensively bombed. The church was never, or the church property was never hit by a single bomb because of his prayers. So yeah, do what you will with that. So both he and Ella would become saints. So Dmitri, after waking up with his hangover, spent the morning with two future saints, which I find rather droll, actually. Okay, so then he goes to Neskuchnaya, which you may remember from his adolescent diary entries. It was a palace there in Moscow with extensive grounds. It was where he would go pretty much every day when he was living with Ella in Moscow, to do some hunting or to take walks with Laming and his other attendants. And apparently it was where Countess Maria Petrovna Belyovskaya was living. So who was she? She had been a very close friend and lady in waiting to Ella, and then she'd married the natural son of Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich. He'd had different names from the time he was born. He first was given, he was made an Italian baron when he was still a child, and his mother, who was the daughter of a famous Russian poet and had been the mistress of Grand Duke Alexei, she was also given this Italian title of nobility. But then Alexander III actually allowed him to take the patronymic Alexeyevich after Grand Duke Alexei, and gave them the title of Count, gave him the title of Count. Don't know if the mother got the title of Countess. So she was a 45 or 44 at this time. He was 43. We don't know where he was, but he had been attached as an officer orderly to Grand Duke Sergei. She, of course, had been a close friend of Ella's, so they were people that Dmitri undoubtedly knew as a child. And you know that Alexei was also Dmitri's first cousin. So, I don't know much about them. They had 4 children, beginning in 1896, and the last one, a boy, was born in 1901. They had 3 daughters and a son. So their children were you know, they were young adults and teenagers at this time, and what Dmitri means when he says Alexei has lost his mind or sort of gone off the deep end, I don't know, except maybe it has to do that he wants a divorce. And the Russian Wikipedia entry, quite a short one about him, says that he divorced his wife in 1904. But clearly, if Dmitri is saying he wants a divorce in 1915, I know that at some point, I don't know the date, he did take a second wife. And so maybe, but he didn't divorce her. So why this discrepancy between Dmitri saying that he wanted a divorce in 1915 and the Wikipedia saying he got a divorce in 1904? I don't know. I mean, Dmitri was there. I tend to believe him more than Wikipedia. But anyway, it's very interesting that he has this conversation with her, this long conversation. He went to Neskuchная at 2:30 and he didn't leave till 7 o'clock. So why is this middle-aged woman, you know, laying this all out to a young man of 23, I think. Is he 23 yet? He would turn 24 in September. You know, that's very interesting. Was he just a good person to talk to? I don't know, but it's very interesting, isn't it? I wish we knew more about that. Okay, the next person he meets with, she drops by the Metropole to see him. She's just arrived in town from Petrograd. She hears, Dmitri is in town, I guess, so she goes by the Metropole to say hi, and she's a fascinating person. She was 2 years older than him. She was an actress, but in addition to being an actress, she was a very, very avid pilot. She started flying 5 years before, in 1910. She went to flight school. She was only the third female Russian pilot, and it was her obsession. Flying was her, apparently it was everything to her. I think she left her family at some point and left the stage and was a Russian test pilot. She donated her own personal airplane to the Russian army, but then became a test pilot, and she survived that. That's a risky career, but she survived it. She left after the revolution, and she ended up somehow as a driver of some kind in New York City and died there in 1961. So what a fascinating person. Sounds like some enterprising person should write a biography about her. And how did Dmitri know her? Well, she was an actress. I'm sure that's how they met, rather than through her flight activities, which he doesn't even mention. I don't think, Dmitri loved trains. He adored trains, but I don't think airplanes were really his thing. But anyway, wouldn't I just love to know what they chatted about? Okay, the next person, he goes then to the ballet theater, and he's shown around by Vladimir Arkadyevich Telyakovsky, who was the director of the Imperial Theaters, a man in his mid-50s, and he showed the visiting Grand Duke around. There goes the TV. Oh, well. So that was nice. And then we have Sergei Konstantinovich Felezin, who is the son. He was actually a stepson. So while he's with Grand Duke Dmitri, who's a Horse Guards officer, Vladimir Telyakovsky, the theater director, wants to talk about his stepson, who was clearly an officer. I wouldn't guess he was an enlisted man in the Horse Guards, in Dmitri's regiments. He was older than Dmitri by quite a bit. He was about 40 years old, and he had the surname Felezin, and I don't know anything about him. Okay, we're almost done here. Then we have Ivan Mikhailovich Moskvin, who's a participant in this marvelous supper. He is, again, all of these people were older than Dmitri, minimum of 2 years, but some of them, most of them middle-aged. So Moskvin was an actor, and he was the husband of the lesser-known Geltser sister, Lyubov Geltser, who we talked about before, who was an actress. Her sister, Ekaterina, was the famous ballet dancer, and she's there too. And then we have this woman who Dmitri has told us is so tasteless in her dress and such a bore, Tamara Daikarhanova, not a Russian name, so yeah, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. It's a Russified name, but probably Central Asian, I would guess. And she is joining this group. She was also an actress. And then we have Nastya, who's obviously the girlfriend of the moment, and he's not telling us any more about her, which is so frustrating. He's usually not, he's usually not withholding when it comes to the women that he's attached to. And they have this grand time, and it goes on until 7 a.m. Oy, yes, and they all get drunk. We drank a frightful amount. So what are things going to be like for him tomorrow? Well, I think we can imagine. So I see that instead of telling you what the next video will be, which will be back to 1939 and the letter, the Grunwald letter, and we'll be getting into deep and very fascinating detail about Dmitri's activities. At last, we've had all the preliminaries to set that up. In the next 1915 diary entry, finally we get a makeout scene between Dmitri and one of the women who is mentioned here, but not necessarily the one you would guess. So yeah, come back for that, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.